Today we got a special guest with us we're going to be interviewing. I'll go ahead and let our special guest say his name.
Steve Arndt.
And then we got Ryan here with us. So Steve, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and the exciting stuff that you got going on?
I'm certainly glad to
like.
do that. Have to go back probably about 25 years, though. Was a college professor, and I had written a college textbook. And probably the worst thing I ever did in my life. It was the most boring, but because I wrote that textbook, when my sabbatical came in 2003, I got to go out of field and do whatever I wanted to do as opposed to do something else in my field of education. So I wrote the book, The Curriculum Planning, the Role of the Teacher, but in 2003 I started the series Roads Less Traveled in Oregon. And we ended up writing 7 different books covering the state of Oregon. And they're self-guided tours. The focus is the history, the lesser known things to see and do that people bypass because we're going too darn fast even on these back paved roads. Yeah. I think it was 2013, I read an article that Oregon had more ghost towns than any other state. And I laugh about this, but I got excited for about 15 seconds. And I'm serious when I say that because my wife and I know the state about as well as anybody, and I don't recall Oregon having so many ghost towns. In fact, the claim is that Oregon has over 280 ghost towns.
Wow.
So, well, my curiosity was piqued. So I set out to find out, well, when I think of ghost town, and I think most people are with me here, Lonnie and Ryan, we think of buildings that are empty, nobody lives there. Well, that's not the definition of a ghost town. Any community where there's a significant loss of population can be a ghost town. So you think about Valsetts, you think about Kings Valley, you think about Logsdon. Old lumbering communities are becoming ghost towns now because their populations are significantly smaller than they once were. Oregon probably has 40 to 50 true ghost towns, but over 200 additional fit the bill of significant loss of population. So when I discovered that, I went out to find a list of what these ghost towns were. And I got a list of about 250. My wife and I started to write the 3 books that we have in front of us today. There's volumes 1, 2, and 3. There are 50 different ghost towns in each book. And so we went out, and my goal was to get information about each one, get some photographs, and get people excited as I am about ghost towns in Oregon. And bottom line then, in 2014, we did the traveling and the research and the writing, put the books together. Last year, September 2015, the first book came out. The second book came out November of 2015, and the last book came out February of 2016. So they're relatively new. We did all 150 ghost towns at one time, and then equally divided them, because in our travels and in our compilation, we discovered there were 3 ghost towns that started with the letter Z. There's Xena, Zion, and Zumwalt. And that's what gave us the idea to have ghost towns A to Z, 3 volumes. And the rest, they say, is history.
Nice.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, out of all the ghost towns you've been to, which one would be your favorite ghost town?
Oh, gosh. Lonnie, that is so hard to say. But there's several that, and when I think of the ghost towns now, again, I'm more finite in my definition here. So my favorite ghost town is a true ghost town where nobody lives there, empty houses and whatnot. And I think my favorite is Golden, which is 4 miles off of the freeway, off of I-5, down south near Wolf Creek. The old TV show Gunsmoke used to be filmed there. and people in Oregon don't realize that. It was filmed there about 5 years worth of episodes. There are 7 buildings that still stand. And there's a church, the old store is there, the old schoolhouse still stands. Uniquely, there's a cemetery, but it's phony. It was a TV prop left over from the Gunsmoke cast. Still stands. It looks authentic. It's the wooden tombstones with names on them, but it's not real. If I may, I tell the story. I told AAA this in 2004, and AAA didn't believe me. They called me and said, no, we can't print that in our Via magazine, or we can't put that in our brochures because we don't believe that that's the true. Well, in 2011, they retracted their statement, but they never gave me credit for that. And they said, oh, it really has come into our understanding that it truly is a phony ghost town. Well, phony cemetery. This is kind of gross, but the term 6 feet under really applies to cemeteries, because bodies need to be that deep in the soil so the bodies can decay and not have animals dig them up. The ground in Golden, because it was a gold mining community, is too rocky, and they could not get caskets 6 feet under. And it didn't take much investigation for me to determine that and say, oh, they can't put these here. AAA didn't believe me. Now they do, but they, again, would not give me credit. So I'm not real pleased with AAA to this day.
That's crazy.
So the actual cemetery of Golden, you said wasn't there. So is that the one that's actually down in Wolf Creek?
The people were buried close. Yes, they were. Their bodies were taken to the Wolf Creek area. The cemetery in Golden is right next to the church. And in fact, Ryan, the cover shot of that book on the very end, this is the church. And right about where my hand is now is where the cemetery is in the ghost town of Golden, but it's phony. And again, there are 3 or 4 tombstones, wooden, but it's phony, not the real McCoy.
That's crazy.
The church is the real McCoy.
Hey, huh? You actually taught me something, because I actually went to Golden, and I was at that church, and I called, actually texted Ryan, that, hey, I found this church and there's a cemetery.
Yes.
So being a paranormal investigator, not knowing the cemetery was fake, I'm out there actually trying to investigate the cemetery, and like, I was getting nothing.
Well, and that's
That makes
why.
sense.
Well, and that's why, totally.
I know, I was super jealous. He texted me, he's like, hey, I'm in Golden. And I'm like, oh, man, I've been to Wolf Creek, but never Golden. Didn't realize they were so close. Yep. And yeah, he totally did text me about this cemetery. He's like, man, look at these really cool headstones.
Yes, yeah, you want to go back to Wolf Creek. And, well, the story, as you saw, the church there, Pastor Rubel was the man that built this church. And he was a very strict Campbellite. And that's a religion, boy, no dancing, drinking, smoking, gambling, working on Sunday. All the money went then with the miners on Saturday night into the town of Wolf Creek. So Wolf Creek became more famous than Golden. And again, because of the dirt situation, the rock levels, anyone that passed was interned in the cemetery in Wolf Creek.
Yeah, Wolf Creek has a nice cemetery.
Yes, very nice. And it's been there a long time.
So, if any of our viewers are interested in picking up your Oregon Ghost Town books, can you tell them how they can actually somehow get a copy, where they could buy them from?
Sure. Unfortunately, there's no place in Salem that carries my books. So you can purchase them through me, through my website, roadslesstraveledOregon.com. If they want to drive to Jervis, they can go to Bauman Farms. Bauman Farms sells a lot of books and very local to the area. Mm-hmm. They're in several bookstores in Portland, just unfortunately nothing locally here in Salem area. The old can't think of the name of the bookstore that was here, Jackson's.
Yeah.
So many years, really gave me my first break. And unfortunately, they're out of business. A lot of bookstores just don't make it with this economy. So they're fewer and far betweener. Is what I joke.
Yeah,
and
that
say.
one that was over on Lancaster actually just closed not too long ago.
Yes, and they would, if you ordered one through them, they would call me, and I would mail them one. But that was the only way to buy one, and it usually took a week to 2 weeks because of the delay of them calling me, to ordering to them, and whatnot, and ended up costing people more money than the book should have been sold for.
Yeah.
Okay, so we went over your Oregon Ghost Town books. I'm kind of curious about your Roads Less Traveled now.
Okay. Well, the Roads Less Traveled is what really started this whole series of books. And my wife and I, just before my sabbatical, took a back road from Hood River to Wemme, which is on the north side of Mount Hood. And Oregon history has always been an interest of mine. And the Barlow Trail, which ran from from the Dalles to Oregon City, was the worst 90 miles on the entire Oregon Trail. It was the nastiest stretch. It was 90 miles. It would often take 3 to 4 weeks to do that short trip. The Devil's Backbone is on there, and it's a series of major switchbacks. Laurel Hill is the place just down from Government Camp where wagons had to be lowered down on on ropes. The wagons had to be lowered down because it was sheer rock at about a 25 to 30 degree incline on the side of the mountain. So imagine someone my age, and there were many people my age on the Oregon Trail. We would have to unload our wagons piece by piece, carry them down the half mile to the bottom of this rock crevasse, lower the wagons down, lower the horses, lower the oxen, lower whatever you had to pull in your wagons, lower them all down, lower those wagons, and then refill your wagons again. Do the same thing when you got to the switchback. And then the Sandy River, Lewis and Clark misnamed it and called it the Quicksand River. So the pioneers thought they had to cross quicksand, which is now the Sandy River. Quicksand was shortened to Sandy. So the pioneers went through Laurel Hill, Devil's Backbone, thought they were going to cross quicksand before they got to Foster Farms, before they go the last 20 miles to Oregon City. But it was taking this back road, the north side of Mount Hood. The north side of Mount Hood was a Native American trade route. Native Americans would migrate each season, following deer, following the salmon, following the camas routes, following native plants and animals. And it was developed and had been used for thousands and thousands of years. A fellow named Albert Walker, who later became a Civil War captain, wanted to develop that as an alternate to Barlow's Trail. If he would have been able to do that, all of that Laurel Hill, all of that switchback going through the Quicksand River would have been avoided. But what happened with Walker, he would go into Portland and he'd try to get supplies and he'd get stonewalled. He'd try to get workers, he'd be stonewalled. He'd try to get supplies. He couldn't get anything because the rich Portlanders, Abernathy, Burnside, Cooch, Davis, Evans, Flanders, they're alphabetical today, refused him all of the credit, workers, because they did not want the dirty pioneers going through the Bull Run Reservoir, which was Portland's water supply. And they didn't want those people contaminating Portland's water supply, so they wouldn't give Walker any credit. He ended up going bankrupt. Barlow Trail was the only way then through and around, and it was that way until about 1869 when the Golden Spike was laid, even though they did last longer than that. But about 1869 was the end of most of the wagons coming.
Wow.
But anyway, as a result of that trip, my wife and I formulated the entire series based on that one trip, and that's how we have written every book now. So each of these books, different part of the state, they are self-guided tours, focuses the history, the lesser known things to see and do that people bypass, primarily on paved back roads. And again, we've been doing those for 13 years now.
That's really awesome.
So what kind of roads less traveled around, say, Marion, Lynn County? Can you tell us about?
Oh gosh, there's a ton of stuff. You mentioned Lynn County.
Yeah.
Covered bridges, Sweet Home area, Lebanon area. There's all kinds of covered bridges in the area. We were talking earlier before filming about the Ralston Purina Mill in Lebanon. And people don't realize that is over 100 and some years old, literally a block off of the main highway in the town of Lebanon that still stands today, and most people don't know about it. There is a grist mill about 3 blocks away, 1864 I believe, that still stands in Lebanon. And again, people don't know that that's there. So what we try to do is to focus on the history, the lesser known stuff, such as the things we just talked about, in these smaller communities. Community of Sodaville, which is about 8 miles out of Lebanon,
Yeah.
had a college at one time. The Sodaville community used to bottle soda water, naturally coming up from the ground. The city hall used to be the bottling plant. There was an earthquake that changed the water table. It affected the soda water, and it contaminated the water. They had to quit bottling soda water in Sodaville. The Sodaville Bottling Company is now the city hall for the community of Sodaville. So again, we take people to Sodaville, we explain the history of Sodaville, take people to where the college used to be, and then guide you to the city hall, which is the old bottling plant.
I'm going to have to check us out this weekend because I'll actually be down in Lebanon.
Ah, yes.
And the Purina place he's talking about, did you catch on to what that is?
If I'm thinking right, I think I know what it is.
So the Purina place he's talking about is actually called Strogan's Mill today.
That's what I kind of thought.
And we're actually going to have the owner of Strogan's Mill actually come on because I want to interview him because I just got picked up to give his history tours of the Strogan's Mill.
It's right. Well, it's right on the on the railroad.
Yep.
And the railroad's such a critical component to the success or failure of a community.
Yeah.
Really neat place. Really awesome place.
I diverge here, but the town of Druzy is an example of how critical the road and the railroad were. Now, Druzy used to be a community named Gaujai. And it was named Gaujai because that's how cowboys used to settle disputes. Rather than fight, they just gouge each other in the eye and end things. Well, anyway, the Postal Service didn't like the name, Gaujai, so they changed it to Druzy. Druzy was the daughter of the postmaster. But Druzy was 100 years ago, cowboy town, lots of cattle, some wheat. Railroad bypassed the town by 2 miles. And all the old buildings, the church, the old school, the stores, it lost its punch. It lost its ability to bring people in because people wanted to live near the railroads because that was the lifeline for supplies, for transportation, for getting goods in and out. And then where the road used to come through Druzy, State Highway moved the road a mile past the railroad, further putting another nail in the coffin of the town of Druzy. And so if you go to Druzy today, it's off of Highway 26, you've got to drive 3 miles in. And very few homes, very few businesses are surviving because it's so remote and, again, away from any major transportation.
Hmm.
I think we're going to have to purchase some of your books and do some road trips.
Right?
Yeah, 'cause for myself, I love doing like roads that people's forgotten about, like up, for instance, up by Detroit.
Yep.
Backside Detroit, the old Detroit highway back there. I've actually walked that highway. And just like you start telling people nowadays, hey, you remember the old road behind Detroit? The asphalt one? They're like, what are you talking about?
No, that's in one of the books, and we guide you. There's 77 miles from Detroit backside into Waumik. It's 77 miles of pavement. People don't know it's there. We saw our first cougar on that road. Because there's so little traffic, it's all paved. And there are numerous campgrounds. There's good fishing, hunting in the area. And again, people don't know about that. And it crosses the old Oregon Trail. So there's places where you can hike the Oregon Trail on this back road. So again, that's kind of some of the things that we put in our books. We always include gas, food, lodging, B&B, campground, state park, RV, so people can plan ahead, knowing you can always find a place to stay, get something to eat, or get gas on your travels.
Yeah. Sounds like it'd be really cool for people that want to do like little weekend getaways, but they don't want to go to the coast or something like that, you know?
Especially the 2 local books.
Mm-hmm.
And as Lonnie was saying, there are 2 just for the Willamette Valley.
Mm-hmm.
Each trip ranges from 51 miles to about 120. And we seriously say, if you do everything in our books, in every chapter, it will take 1 to 3 days per chapter if you see and do everything. We even have hikes. Now they're not, I call them old man hikes because I'm an old guy, so we're not going to do too much hills at no elevation climbs. But short hikes, the tallest black cottonwood, black walnut tree in the United States is in Mission Mill. So it's a short hike to go see that. The octopus tree, which is over on the coast, you want to walk to see that. So we put those things in the book. Mm-hmm. Waterfalls, high lakes, whatever we put on these, wherever we can find on these back roads, we let people know about and invite you to go see and learn more about it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Before I met him, I was pretty blind to all these back roads, and I tell everybody, man, you want to go to someplace way out in the middle of nowhere, this guy's the king of finding all these old little abandoned towns and structures and back roads. So that's really cool that you've got all this stuff. I mean, I'm learning a lot of new stuff today.
Wow. Well, I thought I knew about Oregon before I wrote these books, and there's still so much I don't know. But this has really been an eye-opener for my wife and I, and hopefully through what we have learned and what we have gained, that we're sharing the information with people, make it easier for people to go out and learn about these things as opposed to having to dig up all the information yourself.
Yeah, I think we'll definitely have to get some of his books there, Donnie.
Okay. So off of your roads less traveled, same as your ghost town book, gotta ask you, what's your favorite road you've been on?
Oh my gosh.
Another hard one for
That
you.
is so hard.
Now you're going to make him think.
Okay, I have an answer I'm going to beat around the bush a little bit. I don't know if I have a favorite road. I have a favorite book. And it sounds crazy, but it's the one right in the very middle. It's the South Central book. That covers La Pine down to the California border, the Cascades, over to the Alvord Desert. It's my favorite book because, one, it has the deepest lake in the United States. Crater Lake is the deepest lake in the United States. People don't realize we have a geyser that goes off every 2 to 6 minutes in the town of Lakeview. It's called Old Perpetual. And this is a scary thought. It goes off what we call in season every 2 to 6 minutes. Here's the Earth's crust. Here's the water table. Here's the volcanic level, the lava, the magma level. The magma heats the water to come up through the ground to a level of having to replenish and shoot every 2 to 6 minutes. Geyser, water, lava. If the water level drops too low, there's no water to heat. That's how close the magma is to the surface of the ground in Lakeview. So we have Crater Lake, we have the volcano. There are the high lakes, the Cascade Lakes. 20 lakes are in that same book. Waterfalls, the area from Lapine south to Klamath Falls is full of high lakes. Great fishing trips, great hunting. There are ghost towns, plenty of ghost towns. The state gemstones, the sunstones, are found in the same book, all in that one book. One of my favorite places in Oregon is called Crack in the Ground. The earth has split 15 to 20 feet this way. There are walls 15 to 20 feet high. You can hike about 2 miles at the bottom of this crack in the ground, out of Christmas Valley, Fort Rock area. Close to Crack in the Ground is Hole in the Ground. It is a perfect volcano, 1 mile to the bottom. You can hike to the bottom. And then, of course, Fort Rock, which, you think about this, 10,000 years ago, Fort Rock is an ancient volcano. Water was 15 to 20 feet from the sides of the walls of this volcano. The lake covered most of Lake County, so most of Lakeview and Fort Rock all the way down to Reno, Nevada was underwater 10,000 years ago. It's semi-desert today. And what you'll see are the volcanic remnants that stand in the middle, but that's why it's so flat, Fort Rock. So that is all in that one book. And so it's hard to say a favorite place, but without a doubt, that's my favorite book. But there are unique things in every book. I'm looking at the Northeast book, and I heard you guys talking about Sumter. Mm-hmm. One chapter in that book it's called my Ghost Town Tour. And even though I have some of the ghost towns here, in this one chapter, 123 miles, there are 8 different ghost towns that you can visit. The Southeast, people don't go down there. It's a long way, but there is some really neat stuff to see and do. My mind just went blank. It's the second largest fault block mountain in the world is in Oregon. It's oh my gosh.
Want me to grab the book?
Please. What is? Yeah. This is embarrassing.
Well, there's so much information. I think we can give you a pass on not remembering off the top of your head.
Come on. Hopefully we can cut this out of the... What is that? Not Leslie Gulch. Leslie Gulch is not too far from Sucker Creek or Sucker Creek. Sucker meaning manna, meaning nourishment. Sucker, plenty. And this is what it looks like, and this is in the middle of the desert. But the Alvord Desert surrounds, I can't find it here. Off the top, doggone it. Anyways, second largest fault block mountain. The fault block mountain is where the rock pushes, and this rock digs underneath this rock and pushes this one up. Almost 10,000 feet. It is one rock. It's a single mountain. It's not mountains. Steens. It's the Steens Mountain. I couldn't think of the name. It's a single fault block. Second largest in the world. The only one larger is the Red Rock Ayers in Australia. Ayers Rock. Heart Mountain, which is about 120 miles from, gosh, sorry I couldn't think of the name of that.
Oh, that's fine.
Is the 10th largest in the world. And it's another single rock that sticks up. Again, the same thing. The tectonic plates push, forcing that up. That's in that book. Hell's Canyon is in the same book. It's deeper than the Grand Canyon. People don't realize. It's not as accessible. It's just, it's deeper by 200 feet, I believe, than the Grand Canyon. It's just not as dramatic. But it's fantastic, and it's all in the southeast. The astronauts would train in the lava fields in that book out of the lava flows because it most closely resembled the moon. And it gave the astronauts chances to work, in what similar to the terrain on our moon. So that's all the things you're going to see in that book. I'm just looking through with the Northeast. Gosh, the John Day fossil beds are just fantastic. And there's 3 sections to the John Day fossil beds. One is in the cover shot of the Northeast, and that's the sheep rock. Then you've got the fossil beds, and then you've got the painted hills. And they're just fantastic. And geologic, some of the oldest ground in the state of Oregon. And again, Oregon had 2 gold rushes. We had a gold rush in the Northeast. We had a gold rush in the Southwest about the same time, the 1850s. And as a result of pulling out all the gold, the towns were vacated. The climate in both the Northeast and the Southwest was more conducive to preserving those buildings. So a lot of those old buildings stand. And so the bulk of the what we call the true ghost towns in Oregon are in the Southwest and the Northeast part of the state.
That's really cool.
You got any questions for Steve?
My brain is like a giant fishbowl right now with a bunch of information rattling around. I had questions. Drawing a blank here. Just like you said, there's just so much. I mean, between the ghost towns and the roads less traveled, I mean, I didn't realize Oregon had, over 250 ghost towns. And, certainly you changed my definition of a ghost town. I was old school, if you will, and figured that a ghost town was completely empty. Are there any true ghost towns around Salem that somebody could easily drive to?
The closest one would be Jawbone Flats. And Jawbone Flats is old mining community, also old logging community. And so you take, I think it's Highway 22 from Salem toward Detroit.
Yeah.
Highway 22?
Yep.
So I think there's a restaurant right on the highway, right where the Santiam River crosses.
Yep.
Used to be the Alpenhorn or Heidi's or something like that. Anyway, you turn left there and go about 20 miles up into the community. And it's a 2-mile hike from the parking lot to Jawbone Flats. And there's mines. They've abandoned the community. It's a conservatory today, so kids can go up there and learn about the history and whatnot. But rather than bring the things down when the mine closed, they pulled things out into along the road. So there's all kinds of old stoves and old cars and old beds and things that are sitting in a row along what used to be the downtown part of Jawbone Flats.
That's really cool.
Yes. So and it's worthy. It's again an old man hike. It's a couple miles, but it's not too rigorous, and it's worth the 2 or 3 miles to get into it. Closer ones, not the true ghost town, but near ghost towns. Xena, which is outside of Salem. Old church, 150 years old. There is supposedly or allegedly paranormal activity up there. There are allegedly ghosts that can be seen in the cemetery, but it's a burying church area. Now, a burying church is where there's a church and a cemetery that surrounds the church, and it really isn't a community. That's one. And Xena, the schoolhouse is about a half mile away. There are a couple other homes about a half mile away, but that would be one that's very close. Outside of Silverton is another burying church, and I have to share this one. It's right on the highway between Silverton and Molalla. I think that's 211 or 213.
Yeah. About
2 miles out of town, on the right-hand side of the road as you're leaving from Silverton to Molalla. It's the Miller Church, and it dates to 1882. I want you all, anybody who's watching this, to pull into that parking lot. Now, if you notice, first thing about the church, it's built on rocks, and you can literally see through the bottom. So the church is built on rocks that were laid out, but there's gaps between, so it's very cold in the winter. Very cold. Now, another unique feature about this church, there are 2 doors to the church. There's a single door on the right and a double door on the left. Single door is for people to walk into. Ryan, the double door is for caskets to be carried into. Now remember, it's a burying church. Now, this is unique. This church is unique. It's never locked. There's less vandalism if they leave it unlocked. I have met one person in 13 years from Silverton that knew it was not locked. So I want you to park your car in the lot, enter the single door. It's bad luck to go into the double door. This is the only church in Oregon that I know of that is built at a 13-degree incline on the inside, so all the bodies can be seen by people who attend the eulogy. It's furnished exactly as it was in 1882 when the church was built. Again, I have met one person in 13 years that has known that about the Miller Church, one person from Silverton. And I sell books every year at Homer Davenport. People are amazed when I tell them that. Not too far from that church, Scotts Mills. 8 miles out of Scotts Mills is Wilhoit, former community. It's a true ghost town. There's one house that's left. There are foundations to the houses. There are foundations to the old buildings. There have been 3 fires in Wilhoit that have pretty much leveled and destroyed most of the buildings. But if you could walk around several acres, it's a county park today. And if you take a cup with you, you take the lid off of the cistern, you can drink soda water as it naturally comes out of the ground. Now, I don't recommend drinking very much. I'm not a fan of soda water. But after you drink and taste the soda water, walk about 50 yards to a pump, the old-fashioned pump. It is the best fresh water you've ever had 50 yards away from the naturally effervescent, bubbly soda water that comes naturally out of the ground. Will Hoyt.
Might have to check that one out.
Hey.
Can't say I've ever had soda water.
It's literally just like you buy at the store.
Hmm.
And a lot of people, if I'm not a Scotch drinker, Scotch and soda, but there are people that go up and collect it because it's free, and it's exactly what you would buy in the stores for Scotch and soda.
That's crazy.
Well, I think we're about out of time, so I personally like to thank you for taking time off today to come in and speak with us and showing our audience your books and stuff and let them know about you.
Thank you for having me, guys. I
Yeah,
appreciate
absolutely.
It was good seeing Ryan too. I probably should say this to one of my former students from years ago. I was principal here in Salem. So.
And no, I wasn't in the principal's office all the time.
He was not. I attest to that.
Yeah, so before we do close the session, why don't you give your website again so people can actually come and get books from you?
Thank you. Okay, it's www.roadslesstraveledoregon.com. And you can purchase either the Roads Less Travels books or the Ghost Town books from my website. And I'm hoping to have one more book, hopefully by next summer. And it will be a compendium of all Oregon ghost towns. So it will be a listing of every ghost town in the state of Oregon. 3 to 4 paragraphs per ghost town, basically telling people where they were, where it was, or what's there, how to get to where it was, or what's there, what's left, and just to whet people's appetites, but have a complete listing of every ghost town that I've been able to learn about and find. Sites like Valsette's, there's nothing left in Valsette's. Like the Wilhoit, where there's very little left. Sailor Diggings, Waldo, even where places once were, because people that metal detect like to know about these places. And again, for paranormal activity, you still want to be able to find out where these places were to be able to investigate. And so that will be my last book, The Compendium of Oregon Ghost Towns.
Got to keep our eyes open for it.
Yeah.
Thank you, gentlemen, very much.
Yeah, thank you for coming.
Yeah,
Betcha.
pleasure as always.
Oh, thank you.